Welcome to the Thunder and Lightning Show. We're going to be discussing Tim Gordon and Dave Gordon's book, Rules for Retrogrades. We're going to be discussing rules 3 through 10. We're just going to go through them pretty quickly. So, rule number 3 says, no truth is off limits. We must never be ashamed to be candid. So what do you have for that, Ryan?
Well, I think don't self-censor yourself. I mean, obviously you want to play to your audience or whatever, but, for instance, down there we were having a discussion about feminism, okay? And, so there's some women there. Well, you're not going to, tone things down and say, you have to say what you believe and say what the church teaches and whatnot. And you're so you shouldn't say, well, I respect women, and unfortunately I have to apologize for what the church has said, for instance, that married women who have children should be home with their children, or I need to apologize because St. Paul says that the husband is head of the wife, and all these things, or St. Paul says that women should cover their hair in church, or that women should never be in charge or teach a man anything, and I just think that we need to look beyond that and be more open-minded. No, do not do that. You have to say what you believe, and don't be ashamed to be candid. Don't let these bad guys put you into a box with their speech codes or whatnot. And
don't self-censor. I like that idea because, and I've noticed it with myself too, where in a certain environment you don't want to say certain things.
Yeah.
And I get it. I sometimes have trouble sharing this channel with my family and friends.
Yeah.
Just because I kind of want to bring them along a little more slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in that regard, but in terms of absolute truths, there are two genders. If you have a man, if you're male on your birth certificate, that's what you actually are. In terms of that, I don't think you really need to self-censor at all.
Yeah, some things are obvious and you don't play to your environment. Another thing you can do is there's a way to make your argument in some ways without being as explicit if you think that it's appropriate. You're not self-centering, you're presenting the argument in a way that would be better received. And that may be you throw an open-ended question what kind of, government is this? Or who would ever believe such a thing like that? And you just leave it open to those kind of things. Usually I'll do that when it comes to something like politics or history. Although I guess sometimes in religion you can leave something an open-ended question like that. And I think it probably works best in politics or in government or history, because there are elements of dispute there. And so you can you just leave open-ended questions. The bad guys, for instance, let's look at the bad guys, Father James Martin or some of these other bad bishops. They may say something like, open-ended question, why would the church not want to welcome and make these LGBTQA, WXYZs, 1, 2, 3s, question mark, exclamation, curly opening parentheses, bracket. Why would we not want to make those people welcome in the church? Question mark. Okay. He's not actually explicitly denied the teaching of the church. He's just opened up a question mark. Similarly, the bad guys say, do we not believe, is it not possible that Christ was more than just a biological man? Is it not possible that perhaps Christ was not a biological man and he became human? So you just ask these things in the form of a question, and there you go. You can't be accused of anything, Is it possible that the Second Vatican Council taught an error with respect to religious liberty? Think about it. Is it possible that perhaps Pope Francis is not the real Pope? Is it possible? I'm not saying he isn't. I'm just asking the question, Think about these things.
I'll have to check with my funding sources. And
Where is the follow the money?
Maybe I'll cut that part.
No, you should leave that in there. That's brilliant.
Well, we'll find out. We'll find out.
Yeah. Oh, here's another one. So when the bad, something that the bad guys like to do is they throw out names like, oh, you were a racist, bigot, sexist, homophobe. And so one thing I was thinking about with respect to this rule is, Thank you for the name calling. So
Yeah.
now, if we're going to call names, am I allowed to call you a communist, Marxist, murderer, pervert, sodomite,
Baby killer.
baby killer? Are those names okay? Do you like those? Why, immediately, again, continue on the offensive, why do you want a nanny state? Why do you want to control my life? Why do you want to sow civil strife and discord? Why are you a sexual pervert? Why do you want to corrupt the innocent youth? Why do you love abortions? Your hands are covered with the dripping blood of the unborn. Why? Why? Okay, so they started it, and they've thrown. This will end the argument really quick, okay? When they realize that you're not just going to be a punching bag, but you're going to fight back. And so don't let them be candid. And if they're going to play that game where they're going to be candid with you, well, then you've got to be candid right back.
Move on to the next rule.
Yeah.
Rule number 4, egalitarianism is evil. The retrograde must loudly announce that Christian teaching and nature are generally anti-egalitarian.
Yeah.
So what is egalitarianism? It is basically trying to make everything equal.
Yeah.
So like a good example would be like equal pay for women and men, or
men.
equal rights, or
Equal pay for an unmarried man versus a married man with 10 kids, okay? So the egalitarian would say, well, you're doing the same work, so I don't care if you have 10 kids at home, you know, whatever. So you're going to get the same salary. So that's actually, I think it was Pope Pius the 11th, 12th, maybe Leo the 13th said you need to pay the guy who needs more. The guy with the children at home, he should get paid more than the unmarried man, because he needs to be able to support his wife and kids at home so she doesn't have to go and work. So that's one thing to consider about that. You know, that's one remark about the egalitarianism.
and for that, the one thing I came up with for this was women's sports. Now, you know how there's a separate category of sports for women.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as popular as men's sports in general.
In general, correct.
Most of them.
With some exceptions.
And generally men are better athletes. And, people might get offended. Right? That's what this book is about. If you're offended by that, then cry me a river.
Yeah.
But the left is actually going to destroy itself in regards to women's sports, because they're allowing men
It's going to be
to
all
participate
transgenders.
in women's sports.
We have women's, soccer or cross country or whatever, but it's all a bunch of guys who are pretending to be women. Okay.
So it's a self-defeating principle.
You know what we need a third category. Let's reestablish it. It's almost like if you follow how cars are made. Every year cars get bigger and bigger. Okay, so like the Honda Civic used to be really tiny, and then every year they're making it bigger, and it becomes more expensive until they're like, you know what, Honda says we need a tiny car again. So they come out with a new model, which is small and tiny and has no features and is really cheap, and then that process continues where they have to introduce another one. Well, it's like we're going to get that in women's sports, because now the women have turned into men, and now we need to establish a new category where actual women can be in these sports.
Move on to the next one?
No, I think I have one more thing about the egalitarianism. Yeah, it's don't be afraid to say that people are unequal. One argument that I made down there is that, and this was an argument, I believe I heard this from the book The End of Democracy by Christophe Chazal de something French. He said, we got one of these problems with the theory of democracy is that everybody's vote counts the same. So let's pretend this. I am an 18-year-old high school dropout who lives in his mom's basement and doesn't even know how to microwave a piece of pizza. And my vote, for president or how to rule this country or whatever, is worth the same as this guy over here who is a professor of political philosophy and has read all the best books, the Plato, the Aristotle. He knows Hume and Locke and all read Jefferson and the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers, okay? And yes, guess what? Your vote is worth the same as his. Okay, and the book points out nowhere else in human life do we act like this. It's like if I were to come in here and said, John, there's something wrong with my foot. I don't know what it is. And you were to say, you have two options. One is you can say, you should go see the doctor. You know, why? Why should I see the doctor? Well, he's the expert upon these things. And I would have to say, John, that's so anti-egalitarian. What I should do is actually go get 10 people on the street and say, take a look at my foot, all of you uneducated people who just happen to be walking past on your way to Sheetz to buy cigarettes and fill up your cars with gasoline. You are the real people that can tell me what is wrong with my foot. And then they take a vote, and it's 5-4. Then I have plantar fasciitis. It's been decided. It's the will of the people. They have the mind of the United States of America that I have plantar fasciitis. So, as silly as that sounds, how is, that's the basis of, that's egalitarianism at work, where everybody's vote is the same, everybody gets one. And so, unpopular opinion, when you get a guy like David Hogg, who's out there saying, we need to, or Greta, and they're like, young people, they need to get a vote, and they should not let old people, destroy the environment and stuff. And my response is, you don't know, I'm sorry, you don't know anything, you should not be able to vote. We're not lowering the voting age, we should raise the voting age. Let's make it 25 or 30, okay? Because by then you probably have some life experience and know how to run a life. Therefore, you can participate in some kind of mode of running the government or whatever.
Unless you're part of my generation.
Well, yeah. So anyway, there's a way to fight against egalitarianism. One person, one vote. You're not equal in any way, you the high school dropout versus the guy who has the PhD in political philosophy. So let's stop pretending about that.
All right, move on to rule number 5. Yeah. Risus bellum est, laughter is war. So, I guess, what's this, just laughing at people whenever they say something stupid?
If they say something that's totally off the wall, like as you'll hear from the real hardcore leftists, they'll say something like, well, there's some girls that have penises and men can have periods too. You just laugh and say,
no.
I gotta go. Thanks for the laugh or whatever, but come on, man. So you just laugh and move on.
There's no arguing something that goes against common sense.
No. The only way to engage with that, I think, is to use the argumentum ad absurdum, where you say, that's a wonderful idea. Yes, you're right that men have periods. And also, I think that men have very long necks, like giraffes, and because of that, they can eat at the tallest trees. And so we both have wonderful, fantastical ideas. I think that the moon is made of green cheese. And also, men have periods, and the moon is made of green cheese. And my friend has a pet Bigfoot. Okay, great.
I think the world is flat. When people say that, I think it was Kyrie Irving who said that. And
Did
he was
say
like,
that?
I just wanted to start a conversation. And it's like, well, people laughed at you because that was an absurd idea that's been scientifically proven incorrect. It's not that they don't want to listen to your ideas.
Yeah.
It's that your ideas is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anything else on
No,
that?
not.
All right, rule number 6, never compromise with radicals on their initiatives. This is something that I really like here.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, when reading through this rule, it really reminded me of my video where I talked about the dangers of moderate Catholicism, where the moderate always gives legitimacy to both sides. The problem is, if you're like the moderate gets pulled further and further towards the left with the liberal, and we see it in our church with the theology of the Second Vatican Council. where these moderates, they're like, they take pride in being a moderate. They say, oh, we can't be too extreme. Well, why wouldn't you want to do the best thing theologically that you could?
Yeah.
For example, like beautiful liturgy. Well, both forms are great.
Yeah, you have to say that apparently.
Both forms are great. Like the rainbow vestments are okay.
Yeah.
The rainbow is in the book of Genesis, so I think maybe that's okay. No, like you have to say no. Like we're not going to back down. Sometimes the extreme is the best option.
Yeah, there's no, as Bishop Williamson and many other good priests have pointed out, okay, 2 + 2 = 4. Not 5, not 6, not 10 million. 2 + 2 does not equal 4.00000, a million zeros and a 1. Okay, wrong. 2 + 2 = 4. That is the only answer. You can have 10 million other, like an infinite number of incorrect answers, but 2 + 2 = 4. So there's no compromising between 2 + 2. There is the answer, and so you just don't compromise. There's two genders, okay? There's not 2.001. There's not 3. There's not like some non-defined thing or whatever. There's 2, and so we're not going to play this game. And you mentioned. And the liturgy wars, there's some stuff on that, but I don't want to get too far ahead.
Yeah,
you can continue.
Maybe.
Well, I did want to talk about this just in the context of in the parish level.
Okay.
And that's like, again, a lot of these rules make you think, and at first glance, as you're reading this, you're like, how do I apply this? Maybe go to sleep, think about it for a few days, and come back. And I thought, well, why don't we think about this? Find a place where the leftists have won, and begin to push back. Okay? Obviously, you would want to not compromise with the radicals when they come in. For instance, here's the compromise with the Amoris Laetitia. Well, you see, some people are divorced, and it's impossible for them to go back to their spouse, and so therefore we need to give these unrepentant adulterers a Holy Communion. No, we don't. They're not getting Holy Communion because they're not fit. Why? Because they're living in adultery to somebody who's not their spouse. Well, but they're married. Wait a minute here, okay? All they have to do is just say we're going to separate, or even JP2 said all they have to do is just live as brother and sister and just stop committing adultery, okay? If you could stop having sex, I don't know, maybe for 10 minutes or something, maybe then you would be able to go to confession, repent of this, and then go receive Holy Communion. Well, it's not possible for these people. Again, are we human beings? Are we animals? Can you control your sexual impulses or not? Obviously, if you can't control your sexual impulses, then you're not fit to receive Holy Communion. And I don't see how can you be saved if you can't control yourself at all?
Well, and how can you be fit to even live in modern society?
In modern society.
I mean,
Phil, you're not wearing clothes again. Well, you have to understand that I'm liberated, and there's new ways of so clothes are completely unnecessary. You're not living in society, okay? We wear clothes here. So push back. And one thing I have here, so that's if the bad guys haven't won the war, if they're just fighting. Well, another thing is, let's think about where the bad guys have won. And you mentioned some liturgical things, and I thought, well, how about like girl altar boys and she ministers of Holy Communion, or just plain old lay ministers, in general, lay ministers of Holy Communion. I don't care whether you're a man, I don't care whether you're a woman, unless you are a priest, you shouldn't be touching the Holy Eucharist. So, let's push back upon this and talk out against it and not accept it. And just say, no, it's bad. I'm not participating in that. I don't want anything to do with it. And there's no compromise between, what is between consecrated hands and unconsecrated hands? There's nothing in between there. There's two categories of it's either like yes or no, black or white, 1 or 0, and there's nothing in between. So you just, consecrated hands can touch the Holy Eucharist, and unconsecrated hands don't touch the Holy Eucharist. It's not hard. So, in the terms of the liturgy, look at what Vatican II did. So they say all this nice things about the liturgy, and they're like, well, we think that in some places it would be useful where we could perhaps introduce the vernacular into the Mass, right? So the Council Fathers, some of whom were like, well, this could be bad, but I trust the Pope. He'll make sure that this is straight down the line. By the end of the council, everybody's like, Latin is banned, the vernacular for everything, which is now what you see in your Novus Ordo parish, where it's like you will not find any Latin. You'll find more Greek. They'll say Kyrie eleison. You won't find any Latin in your Novus Ordo parish. And so the letter of the law says Latin should be retained, but then they put this little exception, and now the exception is the rule. And so you've got, it's madness. We're living in a mad world, like the movie, okay? And I don't know, are we looking for a big W where there's this chest of gold, under this big W? What we need to find is we need to return to tradition. So we can't, this is why I'm a liturgical purist. My own private opinion, well, I guess it's not private because I'm telling you, you out there in the far reaches of YouTube and the internet, is that my opinion is you can't have any vernacular, no compromise with the liturgy of Vatican II, okay, no compromise with the 1962 Missal, which introduces some vernacular into the Holy Week, which removes some of these prayers. We have to use no compromise, so we're going to use the liturgy as it existed, untouched from the Council of Trent up until, I think it was 1944, 49, 54, maybe it was 54, before the Missal was actually changed, okay? And that's the liturgy that we ought to use. Why? Because it's untouched by modern hands. Why are modern hands bad? Because they can't stop tinkering. They're perverted. The church has been infiltrated, which we know from Taylor Marshall's book. You've got wackos who have no love for the liturgy. Read the encyclical Mediator Dei by Pope Pius XII. These men are taking a hatchet to the Missal. And they took a hatchet to it, obviously, in the Novus Ordo, but they were chopping away in the 1962 Missal. And you've got to go to like the 54 before there's any chops, and you've got the pure branch. And so this happens to be this is my little soapbox. Okay, this is where I'm saying, I just don't want any compromise on this. Because if you give me this vernacular in the liturgy, I might as well just go to the Novus Ordo, Mass facing the people, completely in English, and just take it, swallow your cough syrup and be happy and go home.
So you're not a fan of the readings, one in English and one in Spanish? I've actually been to a Mass like that before.
Well, the thing is, though, if we're in the Novus Ordo and you're going to have, if it's going to be in the vernacular,
who cares?
Who cares? I mean, really, do whatever you want there. I'm not going to really fight about that. I'm not in charge. And in this situation, I'm not going to compromise, so I'm just not going to go to that Mass. I mean, I don't care if it's in Swahili. I don't care if it's in Hebrew or Aramaic or whatever. If it's the Novus Ordo, I'm not going to go. So have at it, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. I mean, so you go to whatever Mass you want to go to, but I'm not going to have any of this compromise, because I think at the end of this game is Lutheranism, is Calvinism. I was reading Bishop Schneider's book, Christus Vinci. Man, that thing is good. Okay, so this is kind of an aside. Whatever, you can cut this out if you think it's inappropriate, but. So in there, he was talking about the idea, the Chinese now have the approval to appoint bishops in their country,
oh, yeah.
The Chinese government. And he said this is a problem because they now will slant the church in the direction to get along with the state. And it's easy for us as Americans who don't live in China to see the slant happening. Namely that, okay, they're going to be soft on abortion. They're going to be soft on this overarching government policy where they're controlling your life, the nanny state, the police state. Okay, they're going to de-emphasize ties with Rome, and we're going to have more of a nationalist church like they have amongst the Eastern Orthodox. It's easy for us to see this, but in the context of what about us as Americans, we don't actually see the influence that the American government has had upon our bishops. And you might say, well, Donald Trump's not appointing bishops, and Barack Obama was not appointing bishops. Wait a minute, okay? Let me ask you this question. Is the Democrat platform all that different from what the USCCB is asking for? If you remove the stuff about abortion, which the USCCB is going to say, well, it's a difficult issue, and while we remain pro-life, we understand that people of goodwill can disagree about this, but let's make sure that we respect the immigrant or whatever. Well, would it look any different if Barack Obama or Bill Clinton had appointed bishops in the United States of America?
Probably not much.
I don't think it would look any different. So we've already got government-appointed bishops in the United States of America. I mean, you could probably count on one hand one who are going to who will oppose the regime of, suppose, let's just say Barack Obama, because he was the most recent Democrat president. They just paid a lip service to like pro-life or the whole gay marriage thing. It was just some really weak lip service. And they said, well, we need religious freedom, and we're going to have a fortnight for freedom. And that thing died out, and nothing happened, because they continue to sing the Pledge of Allegiance to the Democrat Party and whatever those talking points might be. So I think we've already got these. The United States government's practically appointing American bishops, if not by dictate, by the idea of we need to get along, we need to be good Americans and fit in with everybody else. We want the higher ups in the Democrat Party who want to help, the little guy, the immigrant and the laborer and whatever. And we need to compromise. Let's compromise with them on the whole pro-life issue, for the sake of having a proper impact in society. We don't want to be driven underground or discourage people, so let's play the game with the government.
They're also playing the game with this. Money, that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why they compromise.
They get the money every time they resettle an illegal. They get all that money. Thanks to, was it Obama that instituted that the USCCB gets the money?
Was.
So I think they get a ton of money every time they resettle.
USCCB, Catholic Charities.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Look at, for instance, the whole thing about how there used to be a rule that Catholic-run schools could not get money as far as tuition dollars coming from federal student loans. So what did the church do? Did they say, well, we're just not going to take your money? They said, man, that money looks good. Wow, think of all the nice cars I could buy, palaces. Wow, you know what we'll do? We'll just, they said we have to just get all the priests and the bishops off the board. So we'll just have, you're a layman, okay? So you become, I'll give the parish to you, not the parish, but I'll give this Notre Dame University. It can become yours. And just that money, man. Yeah, okay. So Notre Dame, and you got Notre Dame, and I've got the money. See the compromise. Now you're running Notre Dame University, and of course you're just a layman, and you're as uneducated as every other layman who's out there. And so the TV says contraception is good. And you're like, well, I don't know about contraception. Well, here comes the Winnipeg statement from the bishops of Canada. It says it's a matter of conscience for you to decide whether you should use contraception or not. You know what's also a matter of conscience? Maybe I should never give another dime to the Conference of Catholic Bishops. Well, wait a minute. You have a duty to support us financially. And, well, you have a duty to teach the Catholic faith. But anyway, here we go. Back to this whole thing is now you've got control of Notre Dame, and so therefore you can get those tax dollars. again, no compromise.